will this be controversial? Very likely. If you're doing really grand motions, you're jumping really high into the air, and your voice remains perfectly stable, it sounds perfectly like the studio version, there's something fishy going on. Hi, welcome. My name is Angelina, and this is an episode of K-pop Investigations, where I take a specific subject and do a little bit of a deep dive and present to you my super scientific results. So you should definitely subscribe before I get too famous and just sell out. Now, I stared at my parrot portrait for a good 20 minutes, wondering if I should even make this video. I've managed to stay scandal-free for a relatively long time about that. But alas, this is something that I've wanted to talk about for a really long time, despite the fact that my performance analysis videos tend to ruffle some feathers. And it's definitely something that a lot of people misunderstand me on when I do critique performances. Hopefully, Shushi doesn't cancel me for this one. Now, within my performance analysis videos, I often get accused of demanding perfection from idols. But this is so far from the truth. I just tend to that. I have a harder time kind of connecting with that performance. But I want imperfection. I encourage it. I think the imperfection within a performance is actually what makes a performance amazing. If you're singing and dancing so beautiful. And that's kind of my biggest critiques when it comes to 3rd and 4th gen K-pop. As backup vocals tend to be very overpowering, and thusly voices tend to get drowned out. But I digress. It got me to thinking that I should talk about my faves and performances where they're singing live or lip singing or honestly everything in between. Now, most K-pop fans will probably think, wow, that's incredibly mean. Also, I don't think fat people deserve respect, so keep my faves out of your mouth. Which brings us to the disclaimer of this video. Whether or not your faves lip sync depend on so many factors, whether they're comfortable singing and dancing simultaneously depending on which music shows they're on. Sometimes it is completely out of their control, but regardless, everyone we're going to be talking about in this video are talented. Just because I appreciate raw vocals in a performance doesn't mean that's the only thing that can be appreciated from a performance. So from 21 to Blackpink, from 2nd gen all the way to 4th gen. I've got plenty of examples. Now, will this be controversial? Very likely. Okay, so there are different types of performances within K-pop, as we all know. There are, of course, live performances where idols are singing live. However, within this category, there are subcategories. And these subcategories are basically distinguished by what level or how loud the backup tracks are or the backup vocals are during a performance. For example, you could have 0 backup vocals, as shown in this performance of 21's Come Back Home. 1, 2, 3, 넌 나를 떠났지만. Wow, that was so pleasing to the ears, maybe you should stand. Now, these types of performances are admittedly not the most common within K-pop, especially among performances that require a certain level of dancing, and we'll get into those examples later. But that doesn't mean for sit-down performances that you wouldn't necessarily have a backup track anyways. I mean, even in this performance of It Hurts by 21, there is a backup track. However, it's not always there, and the majority of the performance is just their voices. In this performance of Blackpink's Stay, there is a backup track. Again, we see the backup vocals only come in once in a while, and the majority of the performance is their voices. Also, in Minji's performance for Lovely, this is the case as well. She carries most of the performance with her voice, and then backup vocals come in when necessary just to add a little bit of something. But let me show you another example of a performance with 0 backup track. And that is JYJ's In Heaven. Now, I need to cut the clips down to like 5 seconds in length to avoid copyright, but just know that these high notes deserve so much much better. So, you know, when you have these type of sit-down performances, the essence of the entire performance is driven by the emotions that the artist is able to evoke through their voices. And it's so powerful and it's so beautiful, and especially if you can get like an acoustic version. Now, not to bring up Blackpink and 21 again, but 21 did have a lot more opportunities to do like acoustic versions of things, like live acoustic versions of things. Which I truly believe in my heart, Blackpink would do such a good job of. Now, they have released acoustic versions, but like studio versions of their songs, but wouldn't you just love to have Blackpink just sit there with a guitar and just belt their hearts out, kind of like Rose did in her Instagram live. Wow, wonderful, great. Just raw, powerful, emotionally driven voices. Chef's kiss, as they say. There's no doubt that these idols are able to sing. There's no way that you're gonna go through years and years of training and not be able to sing. That's not the point of this video. The point of this video isn't to stigmatize lip singing or stigmatize using very loud backup tracks. That's not the case at all. But maybe we can kind of get a better understanding of why it's being used. But then in contrast to those performances, there are performances that feature singing and dancing, and so the backup vocals are usually a lot stronger. And within K-pop, this is the most common, even all the way back to second gen. There are plenty of performances that have a certain level of backup tracks to support them. However, the main difference between second gen all the way to third and fourth gen is that within the newer generations of K-pop, we're really seeing that the backup tracks tend to be a lot more overpowering. So for example, let's take a look at this performance by 4Minute. And then let's take a look at this performance by Chocolat. You can hear mistakes, you can hear the rawness in their voices, but I would argue that you would probably very unlikely hear that level of rawness within third and fourth gen, even amongst performances where you can hear their live vocals. For example, ANS. Let's go! Now, ANS is a group that perform live very consistently, and they do have a backup track, no doubt. And there are instances where you can hear little mistakes or little voice cracks, and I love that. I'm not stigmatizing that. That to me shows that the performance is real and authentic, and I applaud ANS for being so consistent. But if we compare it to 4Minute or Chocolat or many other second gen groups, there is a clear difference between how raw it really sounds. There are definitely levels of rawness that can be perceived 100%, but the degree to how raw it is different. Statistically, of course. So again, when we reach third gen K-pop, we're starting to see that vocals are drowned out a lot more and a lot more consistently, especially in music shows. Now, my first theory about this is that K-pop, for whatever reason, has taken the road to perfectionism. So there's this consistent search for perfection. And you can see this through a lot of aspects within K-pop. I mean, even if you're watching certain vlogs by some of your faves, you might notice that they have a smoothing filter for their skin. For one, this is so weird, but we don't even see armpit hair anymore. We also see K-pop being a lot more reserved. So in second gen, a girl group could collab with a boy group, but you really don't see that as much anymore. Or, you know, a boy group could feature girls in their music videos, and you don't tend to see that so commonly anymore. So my theory is that there is really the search for perfection within K-pop, that the newer generations of K-pop really want this look of perfection, and I think there's many reasons behind that, but maybe that's a subject for another video if you guys are interested. Where did the armpit hair go? A K-pop analysis. But yes, back to an example of strong backup vocals. Now, we're gonna look at a performance by Jennie for her song Solo. Now, this has already gotten me cancelled, but it's fine. Hear me out. Jennie has an amazing voice, there's no doubt about that. She is 100% capable of singing and dancing simultaneously and sounding amazing. But for music shows specifically and for solo specifically, it seems that her voice tends to get a little bit lost. If we look at a performance of Solo, the same exact song, but on an award show, you can really see a difference. So on this award show, you see Jennie. She is singing, dancing simultaneously. It is raw. You can hear her breathing. You can hear when she stops breathing. No, when she stops singing. You can hear the struggle and you know it's live and you're reassured that this performance is 100% live and it's so beautiful. You can literally hear when she stops singing. And I'm no expert, but I live for moments like these. I have a sad life. So it's interesting how in different contexts, we can hear them very differently. So if we compare this to a second gen performance, let's look at SS501's Love Ya. Again, you can hear the rawness, you can hear the struggle. The backup vocals are admittedly less strong, but I feel like the performance evokes the same vibe. When you don't have enough breath to continue singing, when you have this look of intensity on your face because you're literally giving it your all and you know people can hear you. It's moments like that that I appreciate so much because it reflects reality. If an idol is singing and dancing simultaneously and their voices don't reflect that reality, then I don't believe the story that they're trying to tell me. It's very likely that you're not singing 100% live. Another more recent example is this performance in Mix 9. Now, of course, Jungko's vocals, amazing, wonderful, great. But I wanted to point out this random guy who is doing this really odd humping motion into the air. Listen to his voice. When he does that motion, you can hear it in his voice because he is moving. His body is moving. The weird humping air motion corresponds to the sound of his voice. Even going back to this solo performance by Jennie, we can see how the motion of her hips really reflects her voice. I'ma do it on my own now that you're alone, but you're looking for a clone now. And that's something that I personally look for. If you're doing really grand motions, you're jumping really high into the air, and your voice remains perfectly stable, it sounds perfectly like the studio version, there's something fishy going on. However, it's super important to note that vocals aren't everything to everyone. There are so many aspects of a performance that you can enjoy. Some people appreciate the experience as a whole. Some people love the choreography. For example, we have a group like TXT who historically have used very strong backup vocals to support their performances. However, in recent times for performances like Can't You See Me, I'm definitely hearing more rawness, so I appreciate that so much. But to me, the beauty in TXT performances lie within the choreography, lie within the intricacies of the choreography. To me, TXT bring forth such interesting aspects when it comes to the dances, aspects that are unmatched, aspects that I've never seen before. So even if their voices tend to be a little bit drowned out, I don't even care because the main focal point of it all is the choreography, and there's no denying that they have amazing choreography. Twice are another example because their voices tend to be drowned out as well, but they evoke such amazing feelings when you watch them perform. They bring you to a totally different world, and they still make you feel a certain way regardless, and I still appreciate Twice performances for other reasons. So me appreciating raw vocals doesn't mean that I can't appreciate other aspects. It doesn't mean that you can't appreciate other aspects. It doesn't mean that if you can't hear them singing 100% live, that it's a bad performance. And of course, this usually is within music show context. And in fact, if you take these idols out of the music show context, you will be able to see that they really are able to steal the show with their voices alone. But let's keep on that same note of very overpowering vocals for science. Now, I've heard through the grapevine through a few other sources that idols can actually choose the percentage of backup vocals that play while they are performing. So it can be really, really loud to like 90% to very, very soft to 20%. So for the 90%, you won't really hear their voices. They're still singing, of course, but they'll be drowned out, as I've expressed many times. But at 20%, you'll hear them. And I think that makes a lot of sense because you can hear the different levels of each member, and not every member has to choose the same percentage. For example, you might hear one member super clearly, and then you might not hear another member at all. ATEEZ and G-idol are really good examples of this. And I have a theory, so let's get into that theory. So for ATEEZ, the members you can hear very consistently across performances are Hongjung and Mingi. And I think that's because they are rappers. So if you're a rapper and you have a handheld mic, I think it's a lot easier to kind of overpower your backup track. Because it's almost acceptable to just kind of yell into the mic and hype up the crowd. In contrast to members who have very soft vocal parts, you wouldn't really expect them to be able to sing loudly, kind of yelling and dancing at the same time, and still fit that soft part of the song. And similarly, when Soyeon is rapping, you can really hear her. So in these Uh-Oh performances, you hear her very clearly. In these line performances, you also hear her very clearly. But then when she takes on a vocal position, you tend to not hear her all that often, as shown in these Oh My God performances. Now, of course, this isn't always the case, but it seems to mostly be the case. Because we also have Jongho, an example of a non-rapper who sings so powerfully that it overpowers any backup track. And you can really hear him quite consistently. But the essence of my theory still remains intact because his parts are not in any way soft. However, I'm just like totally destroying my theory, but it's fine. My theory is it's more common for you to hear rappers and less common for you to hear people with softer voices, but it doesn't mean you never hear people with softer voices. In this G-idol showcase for Oh My God, you can hear Myeon's voice very clearly. It's so beautiful. There's so much intensity that you can see in her face, and I think it's very wonderful. Although I have my own theories, I think ultimately it might also depend on which music shows you're performing at, because we don't know what kind of editing goes into it before they upload it. We don't know what kind of behind the scenes things goes on before they upload their videos for us to watch. And of course, it depends on the idols if they feel comfortable singing and dancing, if they're even able to, because there are some choreographies that are so extra that like it's really unreasonable to even think that someone could sing and dance to that. I mean, if you look at this performance of Feel Special, go all the way to the end. Look at how hard they are breathing after that performance. That's an intense choreography. And it's just science that you need to be able to breathe to be able to sing. But I don't know, go ask a vocal coach about that. It's also super important to note that not all music shows do the same thing, right? For one music show, you might have to perform the same song 10 times over to get the perfect shots. This isn't always the case. There are, of course, performances where you see mistakes and they haven't bothered to fix them. But there's some instances where in one clip, an idol has specific earrings on and then in the next shot, they're gone. So that's definitely something to take into consideration as well. So we've covered live vocals, and then we've covered live vocals with whatever percentage of backup vocals may or may not be there. But now let's talk about lip singing, because I feel that this is a really clever way to get away with lip singing, and I'll explain it to you. There are performances in K-pop that sound so eerily live, but then when you look at the energy they're giving, or their mouths, or the way they take the mic away a little bit too fast, but the voice is still perfectly clear, there's something fishy going on. So this is something called live all recording. According to kpopbehind.com, LAR is kind of AR, while it not only contains the sound of instrumental accompaniment and singer's voice, but also contains the sound of singer's labored breathing. Now this is the type of performance that can kind of fool you because you can almost hear them breathing. You can hear pop sounds, which I will display right now. Do you know what I mean? When you have plosive consonants, there's certain amount of air that comes through, and then through a microphone that translates as a pop sound. There's like an 80% chance that there's linguistic accuracy to that. Where's my PhD in linguistics? Holy shit. My first example of a performance like this is Rumor by Produce 48. And I know what you're thinking. It sounds super live, and to an extent, you know, it is raw. There is a certain level of rawness you can feel because they did sing it live at one point. You know, this isn't the studio version. But alas, Mnet is a snake. You know, when they flip their hair and go, I just feel like you would hear the movement within that. And I'm totally willing to admit that there's a possibility that I'm wrong. However, if you look into these performances, there's just like little things like that that kind of give it away. You know, if we compare it to that Mix 9 performance that I showed earlier, you know, here you can't hear the movement. But here you can absolutely hear the movement. And they sound great. Like, it's still an amazing performance. There's still rawness to this performance, but it's perhaps not raw in real time. They recorded it live while they weren't dancing at one point and then played that track over them performing live. But this is just an observation. We also have now I'm gonna get extra canceled for this, but Blackpink's performance of So Hot. You know, there are just parts where they missed a few of the lyrics, but it sounds perfectly fine, where they remove their mic a little bit too fast from their mouths, and instead of the voice tapering off slowly or their voices completely cutting off, it just sounds exactly the same. But Lisa really gives this away. Lisa just has such incredible energy, and she's giving it her all. But the energy from the voice that you're hearing doesn't really match. Don't gotta say no more. Look at my face and they know they've seen it before. Oh, made it to vote. And I just know that if she were to perform this live, that it would sound differently, that her energy would really translate into it. Just like if you watch a concert version fan cam of this performance, you will see. I still love it though. It's still an amazing song. It's still a beautiful, you know, third gen representation of a second gen song with second gen elements. It's beautiful. I'm not knocking this performance. But it's just interesting to think about why, you know, on certain award shows, they won't let you sing live, and then on other award shows, they do. It's interesting to see how idols are perfectly capable of something, but somewhere along down the line, the search for perfection possibly prevents them from ever really showing that. And you know, we'll bring my other faves into this as well. There's these performances by ATEEZ on this show, this Japanese show, Gangnam Box. And in this performance, it seems to me that it's LAR. Because you can hear them breathing, but they're moving, jumping, and you hear zero movement whatsoever. But then on that same show, you hear a voice crack and you see people laughing. So, you know, it's so arbitrary sometimes, and it's a little bit difficult to kind of understand, at least from my point of view. And since I'm going to K-pop hell, this performance by BTS is not live. Touch me. Before armies come for me, I have praised BTS performances so much in the past for being really raw and authentic. But that example just kind of goes to show you that anyone can be subjected to very strong backup vocals, to even performing a song 10 different times on the same music show to kind of get the perfect clips. So the last thing I kind of want to touch on in this video is kind of a hybrid performance, and a perfect example of this is Hyun from Sistar. So ever since she became a solo artist, her performances seem to be kind of a blend between kind of second gen elements and third gen elements. And when you watch her perform, you can see that the choreography is super intense. However, there are times when she's singing live, and then times when the backup track is so overpowering, and it kind of gives her a break, especially since she's the only one singing as a solo artist. So in this clip, we can see that the backup vocals are super strong. But then in this clip, you see how hard she is dancing, and yet you can still hear her voice. So this is kind of like a hybrid performance, in my opinion, kind of like second gen rawness mixed with these third gen elements of having, you know, very strong choreography and very strong backup vocals. And I thought that was just very interesting to point out. And so here is where we're going to end my totally scientific analysis of K-pop performances when it comes to lip singing versus live vocals, and honestly everything in between. I hope you had fun. This is a ridiculously long video. I had 5 pages of notes, and quite frankly, I love this. I love doing performance analysis, but it does tend to get me in trouble, so I'm gonna read the comments for like the first hour after this is uploaded, and then I'm gonna fuck off. Oh, I should have like a, what do you call that? You have like a thesis and then conclusion? I don't fucking know. My conclusion is Stan 22, merch link down below. Also, feel free to let me know what your favorite aspects of a performance are, and you can also reference to certain performances. Thank you so much for watching, and since you made it this far, you might as well click on another one of my videos, subscribe, like, comment, share this video with friends you don't have. You can also follow me on Instagram and my second channel. I will see you guys next time. Bye!